everybody, and welcome to Top Soccer Coach Show. We have a very special guest today, Coach Ray Salvaduri from Manhattan Soccer Club. He's the director of coaching at Manhattan Soccer Club. This is probably his 23rd, 24th year with the club. They've got over 1,500 players. Ray has won multiple national championships as a coach with the club. He does everything from the top to the bottom as the DOC. It is a really interesting club. They use 31 fields. They're out in Randall's Island. It is it's a city environment, and he makes it all work. So this is a guy that everybody can learn from in this unique environment. And he's not just a DOC, like I said. He is a national championship, multiple titles. He's one of the best in the game. Welcome, Ray Salvaduri. Ray, how you doing today?
Marcus, thanks for that introduction. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and your check's in the mail. Thank you.
All right. Listen, I'm gonna get right in with the hard questions, Ray. The hard question for you is, what for the two national championships that you made, were both those teams different, and what do you think the main ingredients that came together for those teams to win the national championship?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the key things that were common between the teams were the collective goals, right? Players have to be the individuals that they are, with their skill sets and their mindset and their talents and their athleticism, and they have to buy into the collective goals and the team goals. And sometimes that's a challenge, okay? But when players are able to do that successfully, I think you have a great team that can come about it, and players that can really impact the game. In 2016, we had a national championship team here, and very explosive team offensively.
Yeah,
very explosive. We're talking guys up top and in our front three and our attacking center midfielder, and even our outside backs who got forward really well. We were one of the more explosive teams in the country. And when you play a 4-3-3, which is what we do, and to me, it's all numbers anyway, Marcus, right? But when we play a 4-3-3 and things are flowing, when you have that type of attacking ability and you're scoring anywhere from 3 to 4 goals a game, what does that leave you open to? It leaves you open to transition. And, we weren't the best transition team in the world, and we were giving up almost 2 goals a game. So we had to score 3 to 4 goals a game to do that. The year after that, we had some players graduate out. We actually had a player head on into the pro ranks in Jacob Schaffelberg from that team. That's at Toronto FC right now. But, we really bared down defensively, and we became still playing in the 4-3-3, and we're giving up less than a goal a game. They had one of the best defenses in the country in terms of our goalkeeper, and we had about 4 Division I guys there between the goalkeeper and the backs, and they really understood their defensive principles. And so we weren't scoring as much. So it was just a balance. It's like almost if you take 2 goals off and on each end.
So that's really interesting to me, Ray.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's basically the same formation. It's some of the same players, but you did it in a different way. So does that mean your training sessions changed from one year to the next?
They did. And again, the weakness that we talked about was our defensive transition. And, at Manhattan Soccer Club, one of the things that we do here is we use the game as an evaluation tool, right? And, it's not a textbook here. We don't say, hey, we're going to spend 4 weeks on this and 4 weeks on that. And, there's some areas and phases of the game that we're really good at as part of our game model. But defensive transition was something that we had to become very good at. In order to become a championship team. And I tell my players all the time, and I'll tell coaches this too, how good you are in defensive transition is what's going to win you a title for sure. And we had to get really good at it. And we spent anywhere from 7 to 8 weeks working on that phase of the game. And there's 2 schools of thought, right, Marcus? You have your, your Liverpool, right? Let's get after it right away. Let's try to win it back right away. Or you had to be a team that didn't have that type of ability and had to really, delay and clog up lanes and screen and prevent the other team from going forward. So we were kind of a hybrid in that area, and we had to learn about our group that way.
Right. Psychologically, it's pretty interesting for me as a player. Like, it's one thing to play in a group that's attacking, scoring 1 million goals, and getting forward, compared to that mindset of maybe we're not going to score too many goals, and we're going to sit back a little bit and not give up so much. That's interesting. The players were able to make that adjustment from year to year, because it's two different mindsets, to be fair.
Yeah, and part of our game model is, and part of our game plan is we have a phrase here. We want to score consecutive goals, and we don't give up consecutive goals. I think that's a big thing for us. And I challenge coaches to take a look at your results over the years in those performance phases, 15 through 19, and even into college, and think about the games that you scored consecutive goals in, right? And think about the games where you didn't concede, but were able to have time and adjust and get those consecutive goals to get the result that you're looking at. So
it's really tricky, Ray, because it sounds like you really did a nice job with changing up the game model to fit the players that you have. But it is hard, because I see teams who are in transition. You could see this all the way to the pro level. They get a little bit more money, they get to buy some better players, and they try to open up the game, but they don't quite have 11 players that can open up the game, and they start to beat. Right. And I see this in college too. A new coach gets the job and he doesn't have his players, so he sits back in a low block. And the reality is that he sits back in the low block. He does very well. As he brings in his own recruits, he starts to open up the game, and next thing you know, the results go the other way. So this is a fine line of when to change things up. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the things that all coaches and directors need to be is you have to be humble, right? Yeah. You have to really look at your group, really look at a team, and put them in a position to be successful. Okay. We treat every opponent as if we're playing national champions against us. And, one of the theories that I have is, I'm never too concerned about what the other team has, right? They can have a great forward. They can be great up the spine. They can be really explosive, but they have to deal with us, right? And they have to deal with our game plan and what we're trying to do. So, but I agree with that. You have to be humble. You have to be willing to adjust. And I think some of the best coaches in the game right now are the ones that are able to really adjust.
Yeah, it's funny, because I always thought this, like, the more I just spoke to a coach the other day, a guy I really like, and he says he doesn't start talking about the other team until 48 hours before the game, because he doesn't want to put the focus on the other team. And I agree with you. I think that if you concentrate on what you do well, psychologically, it also gives your players confidence. Because if you're always worried, oh my God, they have this, they have that, like, not now, you're almost giving them like, are we nervous about this? No, we're not nervous about this. And the other part for me is, how much information do players really take from scouting reports and other, about the other team outside the basics? You know what I'm saying? Like, because I've seen some scouting reports like, watch this kid, he always goes to his left with this scissor moves and this. I'm like, are the players really going to remember that? Or is it up to them to figure it out in the first couple minutes of the game as well? Like, when you're scouting teams, like, are you hitting every little detail? And I'm not talking set pieces, but like, what's your general message?
Yeah, no, I think part of it is it's nice to have that knowledge ahead of time, right? And it really comes up in moments where the other team is getting an advantage in the game. I always tell my teams, we can have our plan, and what I try to do is bring out some predictability, right? You want some predictability when you have your game model and you're trying to put it and impose it on the other team. But yeah, no, I believe it's good to have that knowledge ahead of time, but not, it's not your driving force. Your driving force is your game model and what you're trying to do. And yeah, players have to adjust. They have to figure things out. And, Marcus, we're both center backs, right? So we're former center backs for that matter. But our minds are working always, and we have to figure out who's a threat, who's not a threat, right? What's a high risk, what's a low risk situation in terms of that. But our players have to learn on the fly as well as they're playing.
Yeah, I mean, listen. So flexible game model is really, really nice. It's something that I really like to give because sometimes, if everything is decided by the coach, it leaves very little room for solutions by the players. And sometimes the players, this is a chaotic game, can come up with better solutions than the coach would have. And to give that freedom, I think it's important, especially when you have special players. If you have players who are very basic, who are, who need to stay in the lane to compete, that's another thing. But special kids, because you've had a lot of special players. Like, how did you handle the special players that you had?
Yeah, look, there's a special nature to almost every single one of our players, right? There's certain aspects of their game where they can really impact on their own and make decisions. But the one thing I will say about our game plan and our game model, they're really objectives, right? They're objectives that we want to achieve over the course of a match, right? Mm-hmm. And how we do that, how we get to that, right, puts that flexibility, right, into the player and how they're going to problem solve and how they're going to achieve it. Because you and I both know there's so many ways that we can do that, right? And a lot of it is done on the fly. A lot of it is done through some bravery and some intuition and some players that are willing to impact the game on their own. But I believe that the plan that we have in place gives that flexibility to players.
So you got a kid, Ray, like Karumba or something, right? Super fast kid. You're going to give him the green light, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, he knows his objective. And the objectives that we set in our game plan are simple. And I always tell people all the time, this is a simple game, and what we try to achieve is simple. But how we get there and how we train it, and when we train those objectives, we'll show a player like Karumba, hey, this is different ways you can go about it, right? Yeah. But he does have the ability to look at me and say, hey, coach, I'm kind of going to do it my way. And he can be very successful that way too. But the objective is met, and you have to give all players, that type of flexibility and ability to improvise. I think that's the word I'm looking for, improvise.
So for me, Ray, one of the things that people don't understand about skill sets in coaches and DOCs is like, and you're the perfect example of this. You coach USL 2 all the way down to the little kids, right? To the U8s.
Yeah.
And not just coach, but you're responsible for ultimately the methodology of the club from the bottom age group to the top age group.
That's
and
right.
This is not something that you could become good at in 6 months or 2 years. Like, this is a lifetime work of knowledge that is never complete. It is, if you're a good coach, you're always open-minded to new information, and it's always changing. So how do you, like, when you look back on it now, like, 2 questions is, how early do you implement like a game model? Like, and what do you do with what's the emphasis from the youngest? How does that change over time in the club as the age groups go on? I know this is not an easy question. And also, like, when you first started with the club compared to now, like, when you look back on it, like, what are the things that you've kind of learned when you reflect on 23 years ago, Ray, to Ray right now?
Yeah, no, this is a big question, and it is kind of simple in a lot of ways, and it's also a lot of reflection on my part of my career as a coach and a director. So let me go backwards with this a little bit, Marcus.
Yeah.
When it comes to, you do something for 23, 24 years, and it's your lifestyle and how you live your life, and being a student of the game and being diligent about your process. You hope to get better at it. Right. You hope to be able to achieve certain things and to always tweak and be flexible about what you're doing. Since I've put, I used to do 2 jobs at a time. Right. And I tell people all the time, this is more career advice than anything else. But you really can't, be successful if you're stretching yourself out too much with your bandwidth. I had to make a life decision some time back about doing this full time, and I haven't looked back. And since I've been able to make that investment, I feel like I've improved as a director. I've improved as a coach, a team coach as well. And I've improved in my ability to set this curriculum, set this plan for the entire club, and really understand the different zones and the psychology of players and what we're trying to achieve in each end. In terms of game model, it's interesting you mentioned that, because we have been this year, in particular, probably more than any other year, we're really introducing our game model a little bit more to our younger players. In the past, our Zone 1 has been really about technical training, having players, learn about being part of a club, right? Wearing the shirt, having the parents also know that, hey, you're part of something larger here, and we value every single player and their development, and you're part of our community. In the past, we haven't been doing much in terms of our game model in our zone ones, our 8 through 12s. Games were mainly skill testing, right? Let's see if they can implement some of the things that we've been working on from a technique standpoint in training, and also game-related work. Give me some 1v1, 2v1s, possession, things along those lines. But we have implemented a bit more of our game model and how we want to be successful. At our younger ages, very simple, really simple objectives that we want to achieve during the course of a match. And it's starting to pay off in terms of getting that language and getting that philosophy in with the younger players. They have a little bit more of a simplistic approach to it. As we start getting to our 13s and 14s, they understand their game plan. They're picking things up very quickly. I'm very surprised about that this year and compared to other years, which also shows that the development of our younger players coming out of zone 1 into 13 is a lot better than, say, it was 10 years ago, right? What it should be. But they're picking up the game model very quickly, those 13s and 14s, and they still have a lot of learning to do there, right? They're learning, there's issues of mobility, there's issues of athleticism that goes within that. And it's amazing how much 2 years makes a difference. Because I look at my 15s now that are part of the performance phase, that 15 through 19, and they have changed completely in terms of their mobility and in terms of their whole maturity and their outlook. So, our game model really is implemented now at our younger ages simplistically, and then it gets a little bit more a larger part of training, a larger part of our analysis as we get older. And we use the same plan for our USL2 team. Same plan for our USL2 team.
Okay.
Nothing quite changes there. So we feel pretty confident about it. Sometimes our USL guys take a look at us and they're like, wow, this is pretty simple. Makes a lot of sense, and it does. It's amazing because I have a 10-year-old look at me and I have the simplistic model and they're like, hey, coach, that makes a lot of sense. And he's 10. Right?
Soccer is one of those games, right? It is simple, but it's so hard to get people to.
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I was watching Javi the other day explain how to work the ball out of the back again, and he makes it sound so easy, and it's just it's not like rocket science, right? But the way he demonstrates it, you're like, that was so good. That was just so nice to watch. Yeah. So Ray, at club. And this is just a general youth soccer question.
Sure.
Like for me, how important is it that kids make meaningful decisions on the ball in training compared to working on just technique? And the reason I bring that up is, this is just a generic question I really ask everybody, is because decision-making on the ball is virtually impossible to do by yourself. And a team setting is the only setting you can make meaningful game representative decisions. So for you guys, explain, how do you view that?
I agree with that statement that you made, Marcus, and I think it's relevant now. Here we are in November, right, and we have our fall season kind of coming to an end, and we're going through our evaluation phase, right? And when you're going through your evaluation phase, there's technical evaluation. There's tactical, game-related, evaluation. And I think the key thing, that the type of feedback that we give our players falls in line with that, right? I don't think our players play enough.
Of course.
I think they need to play, a lot more unorganized soccer. There are things from our evaluation that we separate, right? There are technical skills that you can work on away from training, okay? That where the self-motivated player is going to put in a lot of time, and again, getting back to those 10,000 hours that we talk about all the time, right? The myelin sheath building up, on the nervous system, right? So that's very important. But then there's the application of that in the game-related, right? Yeah. So where do you get your game-related situations? Well, you get it in training, right? You get it against your friend, your teammate, your opponent. So you have to you have to come to practice with a plan.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I tell my players. Like, hey, this is a game related aspect I need to work on. So I'm going to focus on that in training, in those moments, in those areas. Right. I think a lot of players get evaluations, but they don't come up with a plan, to put it in place. Where can I work on this? And then where can I work on that? Right. But I agree with you. I think the technical skills, the application of it has to be in some sort of game related situation in order for players to really perform. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I love all the supplemental trainers and all this type of stuff, but there's only so much
Right.
that can affect a player's performance. It can affect it a lot, because if you don't have the technique, now your decision making is more limited because you don't have the technique.
Sure.
But
I don't know about you, Marcus, but I didn't have an individual trainer at all growing up.
I did. It was a book, a Will Corbier picture book.
Yeah, there you go.
I literally sat in the backyard, Ray, every single day and looked at the series of pictures in that book of how to perform the technique. And I swear I learned. That's what helped me, because I was in like a farm country where basketball was the sport and information was limited. But now, Ray, you could buy a soccer app and learn every technique in the world right now. You could look on YouTube, and there's a funny story about a javelin thrower who won the gold medal in the Olympics from Africa.
Right.
And he said he didn't have a coach. He learned from instructional videos from a javelin thrower in Sweden, and he won the gold medal. Right. That says a lot, right?
No, it does. It 100% does. But I think it's specific to our sport. Right. I always tell people all the time, you have good technical skills, right? You got good ball control. I see it when you're on your own, but can you now do it with someone breathing down your neck? Okay. And under those game related situations when you have to make decisions, and, sometimes even in training, right? You're with your team, and I have players who are excellent in training in those game related situations because they're playing in their comfort zone. Yeah. I know that guy. I know him. I see him every day. Yeah. But now can you go do it against someone you don't know?
Yeah.
Right? You have no concept of that. And to me, that's the true competence, right? Is you have a player that's got good technical skills that can go out against anybody at any time, right? And be able to perform well.
Yeah. So, Ray, let's talk about one of those players. So for people who don't know, you coached Jack Harrison when he was a kid at Manhattan Soccer Club, who now plays for Belsa at Leeds United. What did you notice about him early on that maybe gave you an indication that this kid is special?
Yeah, I mean, look, Jack Harrison he's a once in a lifetime player. We were fortunate enough to have him here at Manhattan Soccer Club. He was, the National Youth Player of the Year. What separated him from everybody, and again, he came into us, 14, 15 years old, just like any other young player, right, at that time. If you had told me back then that, this player is going to go on and be in the English Premier League at 14, I probably would have not thought that was going to be possible. Okay. Right. But what you saw at 14 and 15 was a player that had great people skills, right? Someone who had a great mentality. His training ethic was off the charts, right? He would not he trained properly too. It wasn't like he was, I always say players train properly was when they go, when they don't, right? Yeah. I always say that's the most important thing. So, but Jack would raise the level of training. When he was in that training, for whatever reason, if he missed something, it was definitely felt. He's, one of the best training players we ever had. But also very respectful, understood the concept of no matter how good he was, I was his coach. Coach Wilson was his coach. These are people who, he understood that and gave the respect to coaches and took the information from them well. So that player-teacher relationship was outstanding. But what separated him, very simply, athletically, right, off the charts, right, in terms of his dexterity, coordination. But he was able to perform, any combination or any technique in a game-related situation at top speed. Yeah. At top speed and be proficient. So that's how we knew we had someone special, right? We knew he was going to be a great college player, which he ended up being at Wake Forest. and we knew he had the skill sets to be in MLS for sure. But he's taking it to the next level, and
Yeah,
he's had his peaks and valleys along the way. Talk about Middlesbrough, right?
Yeah.
Talk about Middlesbrough. It wasn't a great place for him, but that's all part of the pathway of being a pro. It's not always linear.
In anything that you did in training, like little tiny games, whatever, did he want to win every single thing?
All the time. All the time.
Isn't that a trait about all top players? They don't want to lose anything.
Absolutely. And you even off the field, you want to play checkers with them.
Yeah.
You want to play chess with them. You want to do a bike race with them. It's always the same. There's a competitive drive. We have something at our club called our non-negotiables. Okay. And when players are able to exhibit that all the time in training and in matches and even in life, we feel that they're very successful. So that's a willingness to learn. Okay. Jack Harrison always had a willingness to learn. He never learned enough. All right. Always. When he was with us, finishing was not his greatest thing in the world.
Okay.
He wasn't a great finisher, but he would go out, put the time in. And I think that's the other thing, Marcus, I wanted to mention is, we have trainers, we have players that are self-motivated, that work on their game outside, but are they really working on the things they need to work on? Yeah. Right. Or is it always, are they working on the things that make them feel good? Right.
Yeah. And this, that's really, really important, Ray. And that, for me, I'm a big constraint-based training guy. And that's one of the things that
I love what you do there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I like to take away the players' ability to solve problems the way they always solve problems. Because they just do it if they're left-footed and they always play with their left foot, that's what they're comfortable doing. And it affects the way they perceive the game. So if you could take away that left foot, if you could take away those things that make them comfortable, now they have to perceive the game in a different way and come up with new solutions. And ultimately that can help them become a more well-rounded, better player.
Yep. No, I agree with that. And then those other non-negotiables that Jack had, the focus, competing all the time. We just talked about that. Yeah. He would compete all the time. Didn't matter. Finishing drill, right? Small-sided game. He wanted to stay on all the time, no matter what, right?
That probably reminds you and me of trying to beat our brothers all the time growing up, right?
Whether it was brother or older player or something, we just wanted to kind of stay on. And then, he just had bravery too. Just a brave player, willing to take chances, willing to impact the game. He just had it. So all those non-negotiables he had for sure.
That is, what a great career and a really nice kid. I mean, I've only met him a few times, but the one thing that stuck out to me when I met the guy was humility. Just a nice, humble guy.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Ray, the next question for you is a tough one. Now, this one is tough for me because, my son is 7 and he's starting to play soccer. He joined we put him on a U8 team.
Yep.
And even at U8, they have an A, B, and C team. And I just feel, me personally, is they do these tests. And one of the tests with kids is, do you want to solve a really hard problem or do you want to go for an easy one? And the instructor says for the kids, who choose the hard one, this is really fun and you should get excited and this should be what you want to do is choose the hard problem. For the easy one, they kind of said, well, make sure we don't get it wrong. That's why we choose the easy one, blah, blah, blah. And what happened was it really affected the kids' future psyche. The kids who got used to the hard problems wanted to keep challenging themselves, and the kids that got used to solving the easy problems were scared to challenge themselves at this young age. And I know it's a small test, but I almost feel by categorizing kids A, B, and C or first, second, and third team, does that affect, and should we be, now people are going to call me soft for this, you know what I'm saying? But I almost feel like, is it necessary? And by categorizing kids too young, is it a self-fulfilling prophecy? What do you think? It's not an easy question.
No, it's not. It's interesting because I always tell families, and we talk about this with my coaching staff. Like one of the most difficult things we have to do is, challenge our players appropriately, right? Find the right level for them in their pathway, in their development timeline. But look, I mean, one of the only reasons why we kind of have these delineations is because we have to form teams, right? Yeah. So if we can get away from forming teams and just have a pool of players and just be able to kind of get through this registration process and, just have different players playing different games all the time, I would love that. Okay. But we're not there yet. We got to get to that. But I look at my club as a school. Okay. And I mean, what do you see at U8? Well, I mean, how do you separate U8 players, right? You go to a U8 tryout and there's no background, there's no anything. So you look for players. What do we look for? Again, simplistic, kids who have coordination, athleticism, agility, that look to compete, have some drive all the time, right? And who listen to instruction, right? I mean, that's a hard thing for like an 8-year-old is to listen to instruction. I have a 11-year-old daughter right now. Okay.
Yes.
And she just started to play. So I can get through that with you as well. But I think there needs to be a starting point, right? And then if you're part of a program that has a patient, development program, okay, then those players who are, categorized as B, C, or, the cream rises to the top there. I really believe in that. Like, it depends on the program that you're in as well. So we don't cut players at Manhattan Soccer Club. We just do. If you come and you're committed, wherever your starting point is, if you work hard, right, we feel that cream rises to the top. We had players, we mentioned that national championship team that we had, who when they were 8 were on B and C teams, And
so Ray, this brings that you bring up such a good point. So for me, when everyone talks about soccer coaching and soccer clubs and what the end product is, right, for me, I think you hit it on the head. The end product is for kids who really enjoy soccer to have a great experience and be afforded the opportunity to be a lifelong fan, a lifelong player, and get what they need. And so often I think the focus is on, can we build a national championship team? And we forget about how important it is that every kid enjoys themselves.
That's exactly it. Yeah. That's exactly it. I mean, we have a large club and we have players that play at all different levels, but our goal here is not to, it's not, we're not trying to build national champions. If it happens, it happens. And, we've been fortunate enough to have that, but it's really about how do you gauge success in your program? It's players that have gone through the program from day one all the way to the end, or spend a long period of time in our process, who graduate our club and just love the game, love to play. That's really it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, because for me, and it's funny, for me, when people ask me, well, how, about coaches, because, we're coaches, and how do you my kids in a club now? And I said, listen, my first thing that I look for in a coach that I'm going to give my son to is, are they a really nice person? And do they treat the kids really well?
100%.
That's it. Is my kid goes away happy because the coach was cool and they were understanding and they know how to push the right button. That's hard. That's a great skill set for a coach to have.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I use my daughter, and again, you have your son, and when it comes to your own kids, there's a whole different level of emotion that comes into it.
Right? It's different.
Completely. But I use my daughter as the litmus test. Is she having a great time? Does she love being around her friends? Does she love going to practice? Does she love going to games? Does she love being around her coach? Now, you and I, as full-time soccer professionals, we can sit back and say to ourselves, that could be different. This could be different, right? But my daughter loves it and is learning, and I would never pull her out of that situation ever.
Ray, what's the one question you ask her after every training session?
Well, I ask her, what'd you learn today?
Okay.
And then I ask her, was your heart rate pushed a little bit today? I do ask her that. Was your heart rate pushed? And did you have fun? Always.
Yeah, Ray, that's what I ask every training session when my kitty comes off the field. I said, dude, did you have fun today? And that's it. That's what I ask him. And, he's a bit like me, a lot like me, where I didn't, obviously I love my dad, but I didn't want to listen to my dad about sports. And he doesn't want to listen to a word I say. So I don't ask him anything. I don't tell him anything about the game. I just say, dude, you let me know when you want to tip and I'll give you one. Otherwise, we're, enough.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
There's two pathways here, because my daughter knows I'm involved in the game just like your son does. And, she doesn't play in my club. My daughter doesn't play in my club. She plays in Westchester. She plays in Pelham. And, I think that's a great thing for her to have her own soccer space.
That is awesome.
And I did tell her, I said, look, I'll wait for you. You let me know. I'm around if you want to help. But she's loving the game. I'm just happy she's playing and being part of a team environment, which is so important for young players to be part of a collective group. So
it really is. I mean, listen, I think that the other thing that I totally that you hit on the head for me is you talked about, like, hey, do the, put on the uniform, understand to be on time for practice. Like, if the kid is attentive and wants to be there, that means everything to me. Like, as far as, hey, we'll put him on this team or that team. Like, I want to coach kids that want to be there. And for me, that's really important, because when I even look at my son's experience, like, all the kids really like to play. So I think if you were to separate an A, B, and C team at a U8, maybe it's, you separate on, if there's a couple kids who don't really care to be playing soccer, they couldn't be on the top team because the other kids are more attentive. And so instead of on ability level, kind of on, are you attentive and motivated to be there?
No, it could be. That player that you mentioned that in a year could completely change. And what we just try to do is create a team environment that the players want to come to.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, they want to be here. They want to be they want to be around that coach. And especially with COVID, when that was taken away, you really saw that when we got back on the field, how happy those players were just to be around their coach and be around playing and being outdoors and be around their teammates.
Not just the players, Ray, you and I. Like, how good did it feel to step on the field?
It was great for me, personally.
Incredibly, and also another humbling experience,
Absolutely.
There's having kids and having your daughter or son play gives you perspective. Coming out after COVID gives you perspective. All these things are massively valuable. Let me switch this up for you, Ray, and hit you with some more difficult questions.
Go ahead.
All right, hey.
I'm answering okay.
No, you're the man. U.S. men's national team. Have we improved? Do you like Greg Berhalter and what he's doing?
I like Greg Berhalter. Okay.
Tell me why.
Oh, yeah. Also, we go kind of way back, back to the old days, and even at Region 1, and when we were young kids. So I had a chance to kind of reconnect with them at a USSF fundraiser, sometime back. So I like Greg Berhalter. I think he's got a great pool of players. He really does. There's some challenges. There's challenges with getting them together and having players available. And, I think he's been going through this qualification process, and, we tend to eat our own around here in the United States. We don't get a result here and there, it's a little bit of panic, but I think he's doing a good job. And I know they got a big game coming up, right?
What do you think, Ray? We're gonna make some noise at the World Cup?
I think we will. I think we will. I think that magic number, in my assessment right now is about 22, 24 points, to get there. I think we'll be there for sure. I think we can. And I think the next World Cup, even more beyond that, I think we're going to make some real noise.
All right, listen, so I like him. I like Greg. And Ray, if there's anybody that's critical, it's me, of coaches, right?
Yep, so, I hear you. No.
Greg Berhalter, this is kind of crazy for me, but I like the fact the guy comes out in jeans and a U.S. soccer T-shirt. I like the way he handles himself. He doesn't try to make excuses for anything.
Yep.
And he exudes confidence to me. He's just like, no, this is the way it is. Let's get it done. And I like that.
Yeah.
I like the fact that, we've got much better play. He's got much better players now than in the past. Well, let me not say that. We in the early 2000s, obviously we had a really good team.
We did. Absolutely. Yeah.
Overall, though, he's got better tools to work with than we did in general in the past. I know that we've had some good teams in the past. And my only question with him right now is, he tries to play, and I like the fact that he tries to play because we do have players that could play. But if you're playing Spain, if you're playing Italy, are you still going to try to play, or are you going to have a more compact structure and start to hit them on the counter? And that's one thing that I can't answer. How is he going to set the team up, and what are the tactics against the top teams who could pick you apart. Because I think if he tries to open up the game, we're dead. And I just want to see, is he going to make that adjustment? And we haven't played anybody like that yet. And I don't count friendly games as a real game.
Right. I think he's a very smart coach. Okay. So I think if he's going up against one of those world powers, as long as we have the players that we need, right, that are going to be good in transition, and able to counter. But I think he's a smart coach. I think he'll adjust. I don't think there's an arrogance nature to him. Okay, where he feels that, and I think in all fairness, I think that might have hurt us in the past in some situations. Okay, my honest assessment, but. I think he's a smart coach. I think he'll make an adjustment.
I agree with you. I don't view him as arrogant. I view him as really confident. And
there's a difference, of course. Fine line, absolutely.
Yeah, and I like what he's doing. I'm just fingers crossed that he's going to make good adjustments. Now, it's easy for me. It's easy for you because if he loses, we could be like, he shouldn't have done that. But obviously, it's very hard to make these big decisions.
So the Monday morning quarterback, we're all those.
Yeah, I'm very good at that. Yeah. So, all right, Ray. Last one for you.
Okay.
Because I know that you've have a huge track record of placing kids Division 1, 2, 3, and there's a placing kids for college is not easy. It's academics, it's everything. It's everything combined. Yeah. And obviously you guys do a great job placing kids in schools. But what do you think, mainly at the Division 1 level, of the massive influx of international kids? Is it good for the game? Is it not good for the game? And ultimately, this brings me to the question of the MLS. Does college soccer need to go to a 9-month season to actually become a breeding ground for MLS talent? Or is that better left off to maybe just the MLS academies themselves? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is definitely a hot topic these days in college soccer. Let me take this piece by piece. So the influx of international players, universities and colleges pride themselves as institutions that open their doors to the world, right? So whether you're an international student, right, who's not playing intercollegiate sports, the doors are open to you. So I think it's the same way. I went to a university that was very cosmopolitan, and there were students from all different walks of life, whether you're athletes or not. So I just think that's part of the college culture. I think there's more players from overseas that want to come to the United States to school more than ever before, and the entry is there for them. And I think it's a great thing. Okay, I do. I think some of these players that are coming over from overseas are outstanding, and have raised the level of college soccer for sure. But in terms of entry, I see no issue with that. I think it's a great thing. But when it comes to, I'm trying to figure out. Come back with me a second, Marcus. On the second part.
Well, so the international game that should, for college soccer to be a true developmental, where they're going to go to the MLS, some of the kids, does it need to be a 9-month season? And or do you think that eventually, to increase the quality of the MLS, really it's up to the MLS academies themselves to do that? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think college soccer is the ground, should be considered a breeding ground. I don't see it that way. I see it as a place where you're coming to, you're becoming a student athlete. You're there for anywhere from 1 to 4 years, depending on your ability. We've had Jack Harrison that spent, a year at Wake Forest, right? It's just like any other professional athlete. He has a chance to turn pro like in any other sport. But I don't think the structure of college soccer should be made as a breeding ground. I do believe it's the responsibility, just like in world soccer, right? It's the responsibility of the MLS to, put more money into this and have their youth academies come in and, really be the breeding ground for those professional players. I think the college route, and especially in this sport in particular, the younger you are, the more you have to be around professional training if you're on that pathway, right? Even starts before college, in my mind. So I don't think college should be adjusted at all. I think it should be where it is. And I also think that, the MLS clubs we're catching up with the rest of the world. Right?
So it's funny though, because if you're an outside person and you're just a sports fan,
Yeah.
you see that the NBA and the NFL is completely dependent upon college sports as their
Sure.
farm system, and so it's sort of a little harder for people to grasp why that wouldn't be the case with soccer, right?
Well, wouldn't it be interesting if Mark Cuban came in and for the Dallas Mavericks and pumped in a lot of money, and the Mavericks decided to start a youth academy at the basketball level and have an under 13 team, have an under 14 team, have a 16, a 19, and sign them as professionals, as young players, which is difficult in this country, right?
Yeah.
Child labor laws, labor custom. But what if the Dallas Mavericks followed, world soccer?
It is quite interesting, right? That would be incredible. I mean, at one point, Kansas City Royals were looking at that in baseball, and I know that it didn't work out, but this is a very long time ago. But yeah, I mean that whole thing. Do you favor a longer college season?
I don't. I think the true purpose of going to college is to be a student athlete. Okay. Is to be a student athlete. You're going there for that degree. You're going there for that education. You're going there to play for your school. If you are good enough, just like in any other sport, to go on the professional ranks, you'll be there. You'll be there. But to adjust the entire university and to adjust the entire scheduling of even facility use, et cetera, things like it's just there's a lot of logistical things that make it difficult, right?
What's crazy though, Ray, is that sometimes when we think development, we think, especially pro clubs, if you don't sign by 19, 18 years old, your development is done.
Yeah.
And I think that that's rather harsh. I mean, we saw that Jamie Vardy had signed up for First Point USA to come to American University. We had the guy he transferred from Bolton. Now he plays at Arsenal, the center back. His name is avoiding me right now. But he had committed to Manhattan College to take a scholarship. And what happened was Bolton sold all their players, and then he got promoted to the first team, did well, and then he went to Arsenal, and he didn't end up going to Manhattan College. And what my point is this: how many players, could develop and have a pro career if given the chance? And maybe college soccer is that chance for some of these guys.
It could be. But again, I'm looking at it strictly from a student athlete standpoint, and I still believe in that process. Like you get a scholarship, or you're a Division I player, you come to school, you're a student athlete. If you're on a professional pathway, and I think that mindset needs to be here in terms of the younger, the better. The pre-college ages is where these players need to be identified a little bit earlier. And be part of those MLS clubs. So I'd love to see Lamar Hunt, pumping more money into this, right? And it really does boil down to the financial piece as well.
It does. It's funny that you've seen now overseas, they're going with 16-year-olds to 23-year-olds now.
Right.
Where the U23 team used to be for everybody outside of U19 to U23, but now they're combining all these age groups because of financially, they can't afford to invest in, 4 teams.
Right. So, we're both big world football fans, but I'm also a big NBA fan. Okay. I go to my Knicks games. I see what's going on, and you see how the NBA has changed. The NBA is now a world game. Some of the best players in the NBA are foreign players that come from overseas that, look, if you're a 7-foot guy and you grow up in New York City, a lot of those coaches, those kids go to school. Right. And a lot of those coaches will make you a center. Right. Overseas, the 7-foot guy is signed as a professional. Right. And is learning how to dribble and is learning how to shoot and is learning how to pass. And there's no practice restrictions. And that guy is now coming into league as the MVP of the league. Right.
Yeah. That's so interesting. That is
so I think in world soccer, it's the same way. And for us to catch up, I don't think it's the colleges that need to take that on. I think it has to be professional teams to take that on.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Well, Ray, listen, I just want to thank you so much for being part of the show. Obviously, you and I have been friends forever. So thanks so much. If there's anybody in Manhattan who wants to join Manhattan Soccer Club, I'll put a link in the description and you can go check out the website. That's it from me, Ray. You got anything to end the show with?
Well, Marcus, look, I know this has been a lot of good things said about me, but what I'm going to say is I really appreciate you bringing me on the show. I think it's a great show. I think if you can get people who are in the game and get their perspective out to people, I think you're doing a great service to the soccer community. And you know what I think about you as a coach and an innovator, and keep doing what you're doing, man.
I appreciate it, Ray. Thanks so much.